Can you hear me, guys? There you go. Committee of the Whole is back in order. We are now on Amendment WAP L10 P174-2. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment is to adjust the small purchase threshold for any procurement to go from $25,000 for supplies and services and not exceeding $100,000 for construction to $250,000, may be made in accordance with small purchase regulations promulgated by the policy office, which will include the requirements and request form of RFPs and whatnot. And so this bill is part of a series of just reforming some of our procurement laws, because these old figures are from a previous time, a previous era, when procurement thresholds and inflation and cost of everything was significantly lower. But now, with things becoming much more expensive to procure, the thresholds have, I would say, changed and need to be adjusted. One of the things that I have noticed in this body is that, depending on the agency and its need, we're more than happy to switch it to this $250,000 figure for certain agencies. And I agree with those adjustments for those agencies for the same reason those senators advocate for. But I would advocate, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If this is going to be good for other agencies, I say we just standardize this across the board so that we have a more uniform procurement and everyone is operating under the same rules and assumptions and ideas behind how to move forward on small purchases. And I really think this is a good bill, because I don't like the whack-a-mole way that we're doing it right now, where an agency's problems gotta get bad enough before we say, okay, we're gonna adjust your threshold to this $250K based on best practices by the feds, and that's fine and all and well good. But again, if it's good for one agency, it's good for all of them, and we have procurement issues across the board. And so I think this is a good amendment to make, and it's an amendment that is necessary not just for efficiency's sake, but just to acknowledge the reality that prices are changing. They're never going to go back to what they were in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And I think we need to grapple with that, with the adjustment of these small purchase threshold. So I ask my colleagues to please support this amendment, because otherwise we're probably just going to be back in here in a later session trying to do it for an individual agency when we should just do it for all of them and be done with it. So with that, Mr. Chair, I ask my colleagues for their support, and I yield the rest of my time.
On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Parrish, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the prop for this amendment. What is his calculation for the inflation adjustment?
Do you yield, sir?
No, I don't yield.
Okay. The senator does not yield, Senator.
Yeah, so I did the calculation, and really my calculation is $40,000 based on inflation changes. But I know during the public hearing, there was testimony provided by the Chief Procurement Officer from Department of Administration. They crunched some numbers and did some data collection, and they recommended, based on the number of procurements within the government of Guam, they recommended a $50,000 threshold for small purchases of goods and services. And another question for the prop for this amendment: Did you receive testimony from DPW?
Does the member yield?
I don't yield.
The member does not yield, Senator.
Okay, so from my understanding, there was no testimony from DPW. Question for the prop for the amendment: what is the importance of DPW's testimony?
Does the member yield?
I never yield, sir.
Member does
Okay,
not yield.
so this is an issue. You know, we're walking blindly into an amendment without information. And for the listening audience, I took the courses in procurement under the guru himself, Attorney John Brown. Has the proffer of this amendment taken any procurement courses?
Does the member yield?
No yield, sir.
The member does not yield.
Okay, so here's the issue with this particular amendment. It conflates two things. It conflates supplies and services and construction. And so let me give you a little education. So the way the centralized procurement system works, it's divided between services and goods from construction. And so this amendment treats those two categories the same. So you're raising the procurement small purchase threshold for both different categories. I'm going to ask the question of the proffer of this amendment. Why is that? What's the rationale behind giving the same threshold for two categories?
Does the member yield?
Negative.
Member does not yield.
So again, we do not have the information. This is, to me, it looks as if that the proffer of this amendment wants to just ram this amendment through without the information that's needed from DPW, who oversees a critical part of our government procurement, which is construction. The other thing, the assumption behind the proffer of this amendment, I mean, just listening to his opening remarks, is that if we increase thresholds, we're going to improve the procurement. Okay, so maybe you are going to speed up procurement, but you're not going to get the best value. So if we're here in this body, we're appropriating excess revenues to bring it down to almost zero. You know, what this is doing is it's enabling higher expenditures within government when we should be being more fiscally responsible. So if we are to make changes in procurement, it has to be done with careful consideration, with data, and not hide behind not knowing what the impacts are. You know, I agree that there should be some adjustment, again, but based on data, and the data provided by the practitioners of the experienced people in this government recommend $50,000 for goods and services. And so because there was no testimony provided by DPW, so my recommendation is to amend the amendment to increase, instead of deleting 25,000 to 50,000 and keep it at 100,000 for construction and just strike out the 250,000. That's what is provided by the testimony. So I would like to make this amendment to the amendment.
On the amendment to the amendment.
Objection.
There is an objection. Any conversation on the amendment to the amendment? Say again. Senator Perez, could you please repeat the amendment to the amendment?
So my amendment is to change, okay, so basically unstrike the 25,000 and in its place put 50,000. So maybe I could go back. Unstrike everything that's struck out, and then I would amend that to, so 50,000 instead of 25,000 for supplies and services, and not exceeding 100,000 for construction, and then strike out the 250,000 based on the testimony provided.
So everybody understand the amendment to the amendment? On the amendment to the amendment, any discussion? Senator Taitigui, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, good morning first to my colleagues and to those who are listening. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching how your taxpaying money is being spent. Mr. Chair, you know, I totally respect the amendment to the amendment by this particular author who's taken the time since she has been in this legislature to actually attend the courses at GCC on procurement. I've met with her many of times, as well as I was going through the procurement classes. I've done all my modules, my 4 modules as well. And there is a total, you know, definition between supplies and services. And so my question would be to the author of the amendment as a whole, Senator Parkinson, okay, the author, did he speak with GSA before making this choice, or did he go directly to the agencies? Only because agencies, if they had their choice, they would want $1 million, you know, ability to spend. And that just can't happen. You know, you're putting these agencies will be putting us into debt. And there'd be a lot of shenanigans going on in that way, you know. But so my question again, you know, is just simple, Mr. Chair, if he should yield to that question. Did he speak with GSA with regarding to this?
Does the member yield?
Yeah, I'll yield to that question. The impetus for this amendment did not come from any conversation with GSA. It came from harmonizing it with the federal statute that's already there. I believe one of our colleagues yesterday did a similar thing for the hospital, raised the threshold to $350,000, I believe it was, based on the federal guidelines. And so what I'm doing is just trying to get that procurement for everything else closer to that more established threshold. You know, the costs are up significantly. We heard testimony that just buying linens over at GMH costs more than $25,000. And so I think that really goes to show the necessity for moving these thresholds, not just for the hospital, but for every agency, because we need to acknowledge the reality that we are never going to have 80s, 90s, and early 2000 pricing ever again.
Thank you for that. Also, Mr. Chair, I would like, if you can yield to as well, is DPW informed of this as well regarding the, you know, making it one amount instead of separating it from services to contract, because that's a huge difference and a much bigger amount when it comes to contract versus services and supplies. Were you able, was he able to talk to DPW?
Does the member yield?
I don't yield to that question.
The member does not yield.
Oh, okay, so no?
Yes, the member does not yield. That's no.
Oh, okay, so DPW was saying no. You know, I've no problem to the amendment to strike out the 25 to 50, but I was hoping that we would allow that increase as well to the construction part, because we all know prices have gone up considerably. And I understand what the author of the original amendment is trying to do, because nowadays it's just so expensive, and it continues to rise. Inflation seems to be going a lot faster these days than it did in the past. But I was hoping that the proffered amendment to amendment would raise the $100,000 construction to maybe $200,000. So we increase the 25,000 to 50, and then increase the construction to 200,000. I don't know how we're going to do this, Mr. Chair, if you can give me some guidance with this, because I know we can't do an amendment to the amendment of the amendment, right?
That's correct. So we have to stick with just
maybe,
this amendment.
Maybe I could, if this amendment, Mr. Chair, if you can guide me, if this amendment does not pass, the amendment to the amendment, it does not pass, do I have an option to make an amendment to that?
I think you need to preserve your time at this point.
Oh, so I can try it then. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just speaking on the amendment to the amendment right now. I haven't had a chance to speak on the amendment as a whole.
Correct. So when you go back to the main, if
Sure.
this doesn't
Okay.
survive, then
Thank
you
you.
can proffer that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Amendment to the amendment. Senator Burnett, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, Manana Sidus again to the people of Guam. You know, I support the amendment to the amendment, and I think it's interesting that it appears we're all in agreement on the need to increase this threshold. But if the author of the amendment is going to refuse to answer questions about, how we came up with it or what different agencies have thought about it. I think it just goes back to the root of the problem with this amendment and a few others that we've entertained in this budget bill is that these conversations, the appropriate place to have them is in a public hearing setting so we can hear from all the different agencies and, hear from them. And I'm very sure, like Senator from Tamuning said, if it was up to the agencies, their small threshold limit would be $1 million plus. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of increasing the threshold for small purchases. We've done it for the Guam Department of Education. And, some of the facilities, people supported it because it allowed them to make, small purchases at a higher threshold quicker so that they can get resources out to the schools. But again, this is a conversation that is more appropriate to have in a public hearing setting so we can hear from the agencies like GSA. I'd love to hear from GSA. What are the potential risks with increasing the small purchase threshold? But with that being said, I think that we have consensus in that we agree that the threshold should be increased. And that's a great starting point for a conversation on a bill that, we should have a public hearing for. And so that's, I support the amendment to the amendment because it is in the spirit of compromise, but just generally, I think that this conversation would be better had and should be had in a public hearing so that we could get all of the agencies together, especially if the author is not going to yield to just basic inquiries about the amendment he's proffering. So, Sidos Masi, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment to the amendment, anyone else wish to speak? Seeing and hearing none, on the amendment to the amendment, you may close, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, just because you raise this threshold, the small purchase threshold, it's going to make money go out faster in the door. It's not going to bring better value to the government. So this particular source of selection is basically you get 3 quotes, and you may not even get 3 quotes. It's a little bit less competitive and less transparent. And to raise the threshold to above what the recommendations by our procurement professionals recommended, it goes against, common sense. It goes against prudent fiscal behaviors. Because what could happen is that there may be, increase in cost to government. And we don't want that here. We're here to rein in the, make sure that the government is functioning effectively and efficiently. And most importantly, making sure we're utilizing precious taxpayers' dollars in a way that serves the best purpose of everyone here. Again, small purchase source selection is not the most transparent means. And, we hear oftentimes how, procurement is mishandled, how we're overspending, and not controlling our expenditures because the way we handle procurement, when we could be getting better value. And what the data shows is that 50,000 is reasonable. And by my calculations, it matches the inflationary change from the time that this was last changed. And I believe it was changed during Senator Tom Atta's time. And so to say that if it's, the federal government, why don't we just copy the federal government? It's already available to us. Any federal funding that we receive, they can abide by the federal small purchase threshold. So having to increase it is redundant just to see, it's redundant because the federal government already covers us in those respects. But Guam is not the federal government. We don't have the huge budgets. So what that means is that we have to be more fiscally responsive and we're told we're going to come across an economic cliff in 5 years, and we're reducing the amount of surpluses coming into our government, which means we need to control the processes of how we spend money and get better value, and small purchase is not the way to do that. So I think that, you know, the 50,000 is a happy medium for small purchases. You get 3 quotes. But above that, there's IDIQs where you can get better value for those blankets than having to rush and spend up to 50,000. And again, you know, we hear from the public auditor, there, you know, many audits, that there is a division, artificial division of procurement of small purchases in order to go under that threshold. But the answer is not increasing threshold. The answer is IDIQs to get the better value. And what that means is that we can stretch our dollar further, get what we need. We run into the risk of purchasing up to that threshold, but not getting everything that we need, when in fact we could do it a different way and not through the small purchase method. And so that's why it's important when you're making any kind of amendments to procurement that you understand what you are doing. That services and goods is not the same as construction. That federal procurement is different from local procurement for good reason. And so this is one of the issues that I'm seeing with these procurement changes in our
Thank you,
policies.
Senator. Appreciate it. On the amendment to the amendment, there has been an objection. All in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Back to the main amendment. Anyone who has not spoken, Senator Taitigui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I do support the increase of small purchase threshold. I mean, I'm doing that later on too in the legislation for the Mayor's Council at their request. But before I did that, I made sure I talked to GSA. You know, and of course, the person sitting in the Mayor's Council right now as a director actually worked for GSA for many years and has a wealth of knowledge and understanding of the process, and knows the importance of procurement. So, but she never, as we talked, we never looked at increasing the construction side of it. And, but being that said, I kind of made an argument while I was talking about the amendment to the amendment, keeping it separated between the two. And, you know, the procurement threshold, you know, this reflects the real world of what we're doing business today. And services implies inflation and shipping costs, and Guam's limited veteran pool means that the current threshold often forces agencies into a formal procurement process for the routine of low-risk purchases, and that's under supplies and services. So that, and it basically, Mr. Chair, when you're looking at construction, by contrast, construction is a high-risk, high-dollar, high-impact category, and it involves engineering standards, safety requirements, change orders, bonding, and long-term liabilities. So as you can see, there's a huge difference between the two. So raising the threshold here without careful separation would expose the government to cost overruns, favoritism concerns, and basically weaken the public's trust. So, you know, the difference, to give you an example, sometimes it's easier to do an example. Like, for instance, there's a $75,000 IT or $50,000 IT service contract, and it doesn't carry the same public safety, engineering, or liability risk as you would get from a construction project. thresholds should reflect the risk, not an arbitrary dollar amount. And this also helps when it comes to audits being done when they're going through these contracts for services versus contract. So I'd like to make an amendment just to keep that in place and providing, so my amendment would basically strike out the 25 to make it 50,000 and double it, and then also on the 100,000 to strike out 100,000 and make it 200,000. So we're looking at doubling both areas for services as well as construction. Yeah, services and contracts versus construction. So my amendment would try to stay in the same perspective of all other agencies when it comes to being able to have those abilities of recognizing what's high risk, recognizing the weaknesses that both sides can cause, especially when you have a higher amount on construction. So that's my amendment, Mr. Chair, and I ask my colleagues for their support. I know that the author of this amendment always looks at, compromise, hoping to compromise in this situation. And nothing stops us if this seems to be holding or putting a burden on our agencies to move forward with purchases in other areas. But Mr. Chair, I had no objection when it came to Guam Memorial Hospital, no objection to other areas that are the mayor's office where they need this procurement authority right away as they deal with emergencies. And other areas like IT, for instance, that moves so quickly. I mean, one day we have a cell phone that works, has all these gadgets in it, and next thing you know, it becomes obsolete, or software becomes obsolete. Time-sensitive areas that require, a higher procurement. So I ask my colleagues for their support in this and consideration to find that happy medium. Thank you.
On the amendment to the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment? Senator Talal, you recognize.
I think it's a good idea to keep the procurement amount, the small purchase procurement amount for supplies or services that is currently 25, to move that to 50, as recommended by GSA. First of all, because it's recommended by GSA, they saw no need to increase that. They said there was not a problem that would be solved by increasing that. And what would happen, in fact, is that we would decrease competition again in bidding. It very much decreases the number of vendors who are going to get notice of the government's need for supplies or services. And that's what we're trying to balance in our procurement law. We try to balance efficiency or speed, but with value for our taxpayers. It's their money. Of course, maybe some people don't care how much competition is really required, but I think that's what we really need to push to make Guam better. We need to increase the competition in these procurements, not lessen them. And the small purchase cap lessens competition because it only requires the agencies to send out notice to 3 different vendors, as opposed to all the vendors on Guam for goods and services. Just 3. And they don't even need to get full responses from 3. They can say 2 of those had no response. And they're done. And they go with that 1 vendor. So imagine if there are 6 vendors, and only 3 of them are getting the notices or the invitation to bid on this item. I think we should be doing the opposite. We should be ensuring that whatever flaws we might have in our system, we fix those so that we promote competition and we increase it at every chance that we get. That's the only way we're going to bring costs down, that we're going to save taxpayers money to use for taxpayers' benefit. I think increases are reasonable as time goes by, but I think they should be based on something. And if they're not based on anything concrete, then they're pretty much arbitrary and random. And at least GSA gave us a recommendation that they based on their findings in reviewing their small purchases. Again, we always ask the auditor to audit small purchases. This is what happened during COVID, remember? Because this is where so many of the suspicious procurements come through. They try to fit them under small purchases so that they get less review. They get less competition. Very much less notice is made to the public. And I think that's the opposite of what we should be doing. So I have no objection to increasing the thresholds as the amendment states, but my only hesitation is the 200,000 because we did not hear any testimony as to increasing the construction threshold to 200,000. Construction procurement is actually what we have been suffering the most protests on. So I think there's something wrong with our construction procurement that needs to be solved, and raising the barriers to make it easier for the agencies is not the solution. Increasing the competence of the agencies is the solution. Making sure that they are following the law is the solution so that we do not get protests. Especially for simple things like not being able to provide a procurement record, not making a decision on the protest for a year, and other things. But just to give them more power to go to their special contractors, that to me is the opposite way of what this legislature should be doing right now, without any evidence as to which amount we're going to choose, and especially with the evidence that we have of potential corruption.
Thank you, Senator. That's your time. On the amendment to the amendment, anyone else? Senator, you may close on the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, again, Mr. Chair, raising the procurement threshold really, it's not about weakening oversight, it's about modernizing it. And I commend the author of this amendment for what he's doing, because it's a need. I was hoping that someone would make this kind of amendment, but I didn't realize it was just going to be one bulk amount. I think and I explicitly explained that services and supplies operate in a completely different risk environment than construction. And when we treat them the same, we slow down a government where speed is safe, and we lose control where caution is essential. You know, by separating these categories, we empower agencies to work efficiently while strengthening accountability for projects that carry the greatest public trust and risks. The legislature should increase thresholds responsibly, and responsibility means being clear with its separation as well. And I meant to say, excuse me, sorry, that again, strengthening our accountability for the projects that carry the greatest public risk is what we need to keep in mind. And you know, many of us who've been sitting in here has never even taken a procurement class, and trying to understand what you're doing. It's important to do that, and I highly recommend those who haven't to take one, just to, you know, to enlighten yourself on how procurement works and why we put it in place. I can tell you one thing, in my class that I took, we need to change some of the laws in procurement because it could be very contradictory. I'd like to see it come into something that's so easily read that even the average person can go in there and understand exactly what the do's and don'ts you do in procurement. But for now, we do need to increase it. I totally agree with that, and ask my colleagues to put that in consideration. And if we are going to bulk this into one amount, that we do this openly and have GSA in front of us so that you'll make a responsible decision on how to move forward. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment to the amendment, is there any objection? There is an objection. All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. On the main motion, Senator, you may close. Oh, Senator, sorry about that. Senator Snowenstein, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as I look at this, and I've heard my colleagues speak, I'd like to ask the oversight chairs of two agencies to tell us what is the small purchase threshold. DOE, maybe Senator Borah can yield to that question. Let us know what is DOE's small purchase threshold, and then I'm going to ask for GMH.
Senator Borah, do you yield?
Mr. Chair, right now it's at 250, but they're requesting an increase to 499.
Okay, Senator Montanani, do you yield?
It is 250, but in the amendment that's incorporated into the budget that was passed, it would raise it to the federal level at 350.
Okay, so those are the two increases.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, you know, I heard earlier, one of my colleagues says, why don't we follow the federal, the way the federal is doing it, but at the same time, let's not do it because we're not the same size. Por favor, Gatsu. You don't have to be the same size to do what everybody else is doing. That's number one. Number two, I think one of the comments, I support this amendment, okay? Let me begin with that, or end with that. I support that amendment, the 250. And as we worry about agencies maybe running away, we're going through the budget. Not everybody has 250 to spend on services and supplies. There's do's and don'ts. This is also an election year. Whoever becomes governor in November will tell their agency, you're not, even though you got the limit, you're not going to spend this much because there's no way you can justify it if you only got $1 million or $2 million in your budget. And then we move along. One of my colleagues mentioned the author doesn't want to yield. You know what we say tomorrow? Puti timatendi, anti makantutur siya, anti maopyaw, sunguna, move on. Don't cry over that, but that's okay. I understand. Some people just doesn't like that, but it's okay for me. But for as far as this amendment, I support it. I was actually looking for, and I'm going to support DOE's, I'm going to support GMH's increase because it's the way to go. There are two agencies that need that flexibility, not the excuse of procurement. And and our colleagues said that we got some procurement problems. Then fix that, nay. If we got problems in procurement, then fix it. Because whoever becomes governor of this election has that issue on his shoulder to fix it. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I support this amendment. Thank you.
On the main motion, Senator Parkinson, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, we're kind of back to a similar place that we were yesterday, where I'm just baffled that we are over here defending broken systems like it was the Magna Carta. The amendment is just bringing us in line with federal law, with the common sense of federal law. And just because I did not yield to questions doesn't mean this didn't have a public hearing. This bill did have a public hearing. This was requested by GMH because they said they couldn't buy linens at the recent threshold. DOE needs the ability to maintain elevators, repair doors, and ACs. Not every purchase of wipes needs a whole procurement process. The procurement of a plumber to fix a leak, GMH asked. That's where we got the bill. There was a public hearing. There is a committee report, and none of these people who complained so loud were there or even knew what happened.
Point of information, I was present.
Everyone has had a lot of time to do their own research, ask the agencies their own questions, and just because someone took a procurement course and all that they learned is the system is paralyzed, doesn't mean it's a system worth defending. We are defending the status quo, and it is clear the status quo is not working. There is a bill. It did have a hearing. The IDIQ, we don't have that in Guam law, but I also got legislation for an IDIQ. So maybe we could consider that in the future. The federal government uses a simplified acquisition threshold of $350,000. We are not exceeding the federal standard. We are remaining $100,000 below it. And I want everyone to consider how slowly the federal government moves. Really think about that. Let that idea stew in your head. And I want you to consider that my colleagues in this chamber, some of them running for governor, are advocating for an even slower system to continue into perpetuity. What I'm proposing is not a radical experiment. It is a conservative version of a procurement method already used by a federal government. And the federal government recognizes a basic truth. Simplified acquisition can preserve competition while reducing administrative costs, improving access for small businesses, and helping agencies obtain necessary goods and services more quickly. Some may defend the current system because they understand how it operates. But once again, expertise in navigating a broken system is not proof that the system works or is worthy of being defended. For decades, Guam's procurement process has delayed repairs, discouraged vendors, increased administrative costs, and prevented agencies from obtaining basic necessities. The status quo is not protecting the public. A leaking pipe becomes more expensive when government cannot hire a plumber. A broken air conditioner becomes larger repair and mold when government cannot act. A hospital supply shortage becomes a threat to patient care when every ordinary purchase is treated like a multi-million-dollar construction contract. Delay has a cost. Dysfunction has a cost. Procurement paralysis has a cost, and the people of Guam are paying a cost while we are going through these academic exercises about what they learn from procurement experts, when we clearly see the system is not working. Let us reform this system, let's follow the federal standards, and let's move on with this. So I ask my colleagues for their support, and I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the motion, there has been an objection. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion carries. Vice Speaker? Vice Speaker? Colleagues, we are now on the next amendment, also now proffered by Senator Borja. This is L11 P174 II. Senator Borja, you recognize.
Mr. Chair, if you can confirm, this is the Guam Board petition, Guam Board of Education petition forms. My stat got mixed up. It's just. Oh, is it the procurement one?
Are you good, Senator? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. This amendment that I'm proffering is at the request of the Guam Department of Education. The Department of Education has requested to increase their purchase threshold from $250,000, which we allowed in last year's budget bill, to $499,099. We've heard repeatedly about the procurement barriers and delays that prevent GDOE from quickly purchasing the goods, supplies, equipment, and services needed for our schools. This amendment gives GDOE greater authority to address those needs through the small purchase process while still following the applicable procurement requirements. During the March 9 oversight hearing on GDOE, Superintendent Dr. Wampat recommended that this body increase the simplified purchase threshold to $500,000. I understand the procurement of $500,000.
Sorry, point of order. Wasn't this amendment passed to the bottom at a certain point, and we still have other amendments?
Point of order. Mr. Chair, I asked to table it until we entertain
Senator Parkinson's amendment.
That was my
So it's
request.
put right behind Parkinson?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Thank you, Madam Turley. Go ahead, Senator Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand, the reservations about, this is past the federal threshold, so I see what's coming. But at the same time, when we look at the amount of money that GDOE manages, a lot of the small purchase contracts or services that they need to go and procure for our students, this is a threshold that they're requesting to address a lot of these small programs and projects and services that they need at the department. So again, Mr. Chair, this amendment is intended to reduce the unnecessary delays and allow GDOE to respond more quickly to the needs of the schools, our students, and our teachers, and I asking my colleagues for their support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Borja. Any member wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Sinagin, you're recognized.
Real simple question to the author. Why didn't you just make it 500,000? I mean, I would have supported that.
Would the author yield?
They wanted 4,999, Mr. Chair. I think because the 500K that has to go through, I think, the Attorney General, which even right now that's also another bottleneck because of the backlog at the Attorney General offices right now.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Mr. Chair. I support this amendment. Any delay is an excuse from another agency to delay what DOE needs to do. And I agree with them that they're going to need the 499 because at any time, if the schools ever needed multiple items such as toilets, sinks, and they need to buy it for all the schools because they're all got problems and they all need to be replaced, then they would have that ability to do this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Sinagin. Senator Barnett, you're recognized on the Borja amendment. You were scratching your... Any other member wish to speak on the Borja amendment? Senator Chalahi.
All right, now this amendment is to give DOE small purchase caps that far exceed even the federal laws and far exceed any logic, really, I think, because everybody says in here, oh, we just need this so they can be faster. No, if they need to replace all the sinks in all the schools at one time, they should plan that procurement, and they should get the best deal for the government, for the people of Guam's taxpayer money that they can. If there's an emergency for one sink, they can absolutely do that under current law. They can do that under current caps. But to replace all the sinks in all the schools and waive all the rules for that? Waive all the competition? Allow a response from one vendor only? Allow no notice to all the other vendors over 3 that might be able to produce sinks? Following that logic, we really don't need any rules in procurement. We really don't need any competition because we want fast. That's what some of you are saying. We want it to be fast at all costs, including exorbitant costs. I looked as quickly as I could at all the other states. And just because the federal threshold is a certain number, they don't all follow that. Almost all of them are below 100,000 for everything and much less in some cases. And the highest I could find was 250 for some certain things. But now we want to give DOE the ability to go up to 499,999. Doesn't that sound suspicious to anyone? Honestly, you know, we talk a lot about we want Guam to be better, cleaner, safer, less corruption. These caps exist to prevent corruption. Because the higher the amounts go, the higher the stakes are, the more people will do to bypass the rules. And that's why the higher the amounts are, there are more notice requirements, more competition requirements, so that we can get the best price, not less. And I appreciate that DOE has been able, with the increased amount that they already have, to purchase things on a faster basis. But I would think that we want to push DOE as well to plan their purchases. To give everybody on Guam, this is how we take care of our businesses. We give them all a fair shot. We don't allow DOE to only go to one business. That's what we tried to avoid because we've seen that in the past. This is why all this small purchase was so controversial, because that's what was used in the past, to go to only one vendor. Now we have requirements, you have to get quotes from at least 3 vendors. For $500,000, no one else on Guam is going to get a shot at it? Two of your vendors could be obsolete, not answering. And that means only one person on Guam, one vendor, one business. Aren't we here to take care of all businesses? I think if DOE needs this excessive authority for certain purchases, items that might cost $500,000, it's so obvious they're trying to skirt review by the Attorney General on their contracts. But if there are certain items that they purchase always at these huge amounts, like generators, I don't know, and we only have 3 generator companies on Guam. I'm just making this up. But it's like, maybe in those situations, we don't have to promote competition because there just doesn't exist any. And we have found that. But in this case, this is for pencils. You can buy $500,000 of pencils from one vendor. Or linens. or anything without trying to get any other vendors involved. And I don't know, I haven't heard. What have they been stopped from procuring at DOE with the $250,000 level that they're trying to procure underneath the $500,000 level between $250 and $500? Maybe the author would yield.
The author yet to the question.
Mr. Chair, one of the things I know that has been an issue where this conversation came up was the elevators across the department. Because there is only one vendor right now, at least as far as I can recall, right now that's one of the biggest problems we're having right now is the procurement in regards to getting the elevators addressed. Because there's only one vendor that fixes all the elevators across the island.
Thank you very much for yielding. I appreciate your willingness to yield to the questions that your fellow amendment might be based on. And that makes sense. That's one item that we might have to make special rules for, because on Guam, there's only one or two companies. But we should be very confident that there aren't more, and we should be very specific about what we're making this big exception for. Because otherwise, as written, it is a huge exception for all items, for all companies. And I don't think that's correct right now, Mr. Chair. Well, again, while we're trying to prevent corruption, that we just open the doors. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tulay. Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Hey, Sijus Masi, Vice Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on the amendment. I think first things first, that we're trying to pass an amendment to allow small purchases. I mean, in what world is a purchase of $499,999.99 a small purchase? Secondly, that this amendment blatantly skirts the review of the Attorney General by putting this small purchase threshold at $499,999. It's like a used car salesman, which makes it even more suspicious. And, considering GDOE's storied procurement past, and that's putting it lightly, I'm sure the public auditor would maybe be a little more colorful in his description. I think it's a little reckless that we're moving to give GDOE this authority, which doubles again the federal threshold. I mean, we've seen audit after audit, whether it's textbooks or laptops or air conditioners. GDOE has had an issue with performing its procurements to the letter of the law. And so to allow this ability, I think, is a little bit reckless. The compromise, although I didn't support it, to increase the small purchase limit to $250,000 specifically for an agency like the Guam Department of Education. Again, as I said on a previous amendment, the guys from Facilities and Maintenance were grateful for this ability to purchase at $250,000. But doubling the amount and reducing it so that it doesn't go to the Attorney General's office for review. Again, this is all part of the process to vet, corruption, to vet favoritism. I mean, that's why we have these reviews at the Attorney General's office. And then on the subject of the elevators, I spoke with a guy who works for one of the several elevator companies on island, and they had a lot to say about how GDOE is trying to repair these elevators. And so, I understand that, we've been sued because these elevators aren't working, but, if we're specifically trying to repair the elevators, then let's tailor this and narrow it so that it deals specifically with the elevators. But to give this, blanket authority to the Guam Department of Education, I think is reckless. They've been able to perform with the small purchase threshold of $250,000. And again, I go back to, I know there wasn't a public hearing on this, raising it to $499,999. And again, I think it's a little bit reckless. I'd love to hear the, the input from the Attorney General, and, let's bring in the elevator companies and find out why GDOE is not able to repair these elevators, after decades of inaction on them. And so thank you for the opportunity to speak on the amendment. And I just ask my colleagues to be reasonable and prudent and not allow this adjustment, which basically doubles the small purchase limit, but sneakily puts it right under the number that triggers the Attorney General review, which is contracts exceeding $500,000. And so by giving GDOE this authority and saying, hey, we're going to double your small purchase threshold, but we're going to put it $1 under what triggers the review from the Attorney General, I just think, given the past troubles that GDOE has had that have been highlighted in several audits by the Office of Public Accountability, I think that, along with the reasons that I've stated by Speaker, I think warrant, that we table this amendment and possibly entertain it at another time, and again, a public hearing setting where we could get input from the different entities that are relevant to this process. Si Diyos Masi, Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I rise out of objection to this amendment. First of all, I think it's out of order because there wasn't any public hearing for this particular amendment. I guess my objections are the same as the other amendment that we just concluded. And, really, I think what people need to realize that the government, when we spend taxpayers' dollars, it has to be treated differently than spending it as if it was your household or from a private company. Those types of expenditures are very different. When we're dealing with taxpayers' money, we really have to provide safeguards on how that money is being spent. And so with this particular amendment, it really goes against the principles of procurement, which is what the overarching guidelines are. So as you know, Guam's procurement system is based on the Model Procurement Code. And it's not meant to be a restrictive type of law. But what is really critical is that it upholds the values and the principles and the purposes of procurement, which is to foster effective, broad-based competition within a free enterprise system, provide safeguards for the maintenance of a procurement system of quality and integrity, to ensure fair, equitable treatment of all persons who deal with the procurement system, to provide increased public confidence in the procedure followed in public procurement. And so, again, the small purchase threshold is less transparent than the other source methods of procurement. Like one of the retiring speakers said, 3 vendors. Basically, the law states that all you need to do is get 3 quotes. And so what that means, we're leaving out the rest of the free enterprise system. It's going against what is prudent in how we spend vital taxpayer dollars. We are all taxpayers here. We want to make sure that the money we are taxed, we're given to the government, is spent wisely. Even more now with increased inflation. The small purchase threshold will not get the better value because of the decreased competition. And to increase that amount to this amount, which is right underneath oversight by the AG, is really reckless. Yes, we're all frustrated. These agencies are frustrated with delayed procurement, but the answer is not increasing the threshold. One of the answers I provided in one of my bills, which has yet to have a public hearing. Additionally, these procurement experts like the public auditor himself, who passed a law to include training with procurement. If you're going to procure for the government, you have to take these 4 modules at least. And so what the importance of that, they found, was that protests decreased. And so what we're finding is that procurement training needs to be implemented and standardized across the government. You know, the answers to procurement is not sexy. It's going to take work. And you're not going to try to use it, a shortcut method like this is not going to help procurement in the government of Guam. In fact, it may just lead to protest, which really is counter to what the intent of this amendment, because there was no competition, because of favoritism, possibly special interest. And we talk about people leaving Guam. They're fed up. They're fed up with the way the system is. This is just going to exacerbate the system because it's not standardizing the small purchase threshold, and in fact, it's making it less competitive. We want businesses to stay here, but if they don't get a fair shot, if they're being treated differently than other vendors, you know, why? It just adds another issue.
Thank you, Senator. On the main motion, anyone else on the main motion? Senator Borah, you may close. Oh, sorry. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not necessarily against the raising of the threshold. I do have a little bit of ambivalence because we're going past the federal level, but I am okay with the general principle of raising it. But what I just wanted to talk about a little bit was just the dodging of the Attorney General review by, you know, putting the threshold where it is. And I just want to point that out because for a very long time I've been trying to advocate for reform of the Attorney General's office. I've always maintained that it was never intended for the Attorney General to act as a unilateral veto on any government projects by just refusing to sign things. And I think GDOE recognizes that. I think the Oversight Chair recognizes that. I think a lot of people recognize that this was never the intent of the Attorney General, and even now, more so with some of the reports coming out of the Attorney General's office, I've got grave concerns about giving them the final say over these projects because, you know, he was very proudly saying to anyone that would hear that when questioned about the nepotism and the hiring of family in the Attorney General's office, he said these were the only people he can trust, and he compared himself to JFK. So my concern is, you know, what happens when this attitude goes unchecked and starts to permeate beyond this office? What if suddenly this gets to the Attorney General's office and, I don't know, we can't really trust that contract because he's not my cousin Bob. Maybe the only person we could trust to give linens to GMH is my wife's sister. And so I greatly support this notion of whatever we adjust this threshold to, we avoid the Attorney General's oversight. Because frankly, he has been a bad actor in a lot of these discussions where he is scuttling projects. And I do not want him to be scuttling projects of the Department of Education because he doesn't like whoever the next governor is. You know, that's not how our system is done. The Attorney General there is for form and function. And so, you know, as we have these discussions where we are actively seeing members of the majority dodge review of the Attorney General's office, I want you to ask yourselves why we feel the need to do that. And I think it's because there's serious problems with how the Attorney General's office is currently organized and maintained and managed. And I will support this $4.99 threshold if that's what the people of the body want to do, because I think that, you know, putting the Attorney General in the mix only leads to either further delay or further possible corruption. And if we're already having these concerns now on things like small purchase thresholds, I think we as a body really need to consider about separating the office of the Attorney General and the public prosecutor. Some of you guys are going to be running for governor. One of you might even win. And you need to ask yourself, do you want to have an Attorney General who has no ties to you to have absolute veto power over anything you want to do? We don't want to insert that kind of politicization into our public works and into our infrastructure building. And so I hope that this incident, this amendment, gives the rest of my colleagues some pause, and before the end of this term, we should reform the office of the Attorney General before the next election comes in, so that we could have a clean slate with a proper system, and we don't have to worry about corruption or nepotism or unnecessarily political delays messing up our procurement. Because none of those things have actually anything to do with the well-being of the people of Guam. That's all palace intrigue games played by politicians, when really we need to be getting things done and not be gumming up the works for no good reason. And so those are my comments, Mr. Chair, and I hope the body considers it as we consider future legislation for the Attorney General's office. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the main motion, Senator Bora, you may close.
Sorry, point of order, Mr. Chair. Did this have a public hearing?
Does the author yield?
No, but it was brought up in many oversight hearings,
Okay,
Mr.
so the
Chair,
answer
and
is
public hearing.
no. The answer is no. I think this,
Mr. Chair,
this goes against the
Mr. Chair, I
rules.
get to pick what
Thank
the
you.
answer is. She doesn't get to pick what my
yeah, so
answer is.
the-
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So this goes against the rule, the law, public law.
Senator, thank you.
That it didn't have
Thank
a
you for
public
your
hearing.
concern. Yes. Thank you for your concern. Senator Bora, you may close.
You know, Mr. Chair, I didn't, like a lot of the things that I try to do to help the Department of Education as the oversight chair, I don't just sit in my office and try to figure out what would be the best idea that I could come up with. And I've never, for once, or never in my life, have ever had a job where I'm at a table with a group of other people trying to come up with a solution based on the people that do the work. And I think that's so sad sometimes on like our arguments on this floor, is that we're so disconnected from the realities of what really happens at these agencies, Mr. Chair. It's really sad because I'm not here to fight because I want to give the Department of Education more leeway so that there could be more corruption, so that they could give the contracts to their friends. No, Mr. Chair, that's not what I'm here to do. And again, like, it's just, and I can accept objection. I can accept, reservation when there's at least a proposed solution. But to sit here and just complain about why this is such a bad idea and forget about the intent and what I'm trying to do here, Mr. Chair, which is try to help the Department of Education, one, spend their money, because we constantly say they lapse. And it's because of the procurement. And like the previous speaker from MTM said, is that, yes, we sit here and we talk about a system that we get educated on, but yet, and we're defending the system that everybody acknowledges is the biggest problem in the government of Guam. I mean, my staff, we've done hours of work in trying to figure out a way to fix the procurement system, and it's tough. It's tough because, again, I mean, I could sit here and we could come up with a bill that could change the system to allow procurement to be super easy and not have to remove the threshold, Mr. Chair. But when the opposition, I don't know why I'm mad, but I think it's because, it's when you're here trying to help, and that's, and that's what most of us are here to do. And I get the reservations. At this time, was speaking with the Department of Education, not just Dr. Wambat, the current superintendent, even the previous superintendent. like, you know, when we talk about the Attorney General, the 49999, that has nothing to do with, because again, there's some shenanigans or there's bad, you know, we're trying to help some bad actors. No. Mr. Chair, I get calls at least once every other week in trying to help the department move contracts to the Attorney General, whatever the reasons are. That was the reason they asked for that. You know, we want to, you know, we can go down the list. Some of the other things that were provided from the Department of Education in regards to the contracts that they're looking to address, or the large contracts, the grounds maintenance, which are 450 to 900K depending, custodial, pest control, fire extinguishers, sanitation permits, the Lagu contract. I think some of us have seen pictures from the Department of Education for just trying to get the contract for the trash to be picked up at the school, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, I could go on and on. But, Mr. Chair, again, this was at the request of the Department of Education. And again, I'm asking my colleagues for their support. If there is some kind of maybe middle here in regards to the threshold, I'm open to that. This is what the department says would make things a lot easier for a lot of their smaller contracts. But other than that, Mr. Chair, I'm doing my job as the oversight chair, and I'm asking this body to consider that. And I'll leave that up to the will of the body, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
On the amendment, there has been an objection. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment passes. Colleagues, we are now on Amendment L10, P174, III. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment is a very important amendment, and I would really like the body to consider it, because this amendment is based on a bill I introduced to reform procurement and to end the automatic stays when protests happen. And so for my people of Guam, this is a very, very deep problem that affects every part of our government. And I discovered this issue when I was the oversight chair over energy. We were having load shedding in the island for the first time in decades, and we needed to get some emergency power generation to stop load shedding. But because of procurements protest, we were not able to get those in a timely manner, and the Guam Power Authority had come to me requesting that we waive the procurement so that we can stop load shedding. And so we, you know, got that bill through the legislature. The emergency power generation was completed, and we were able to stop load shedding into the future. It's not a problem today, but it got me wise to the idea that there is a fundamental problem in our procurement. And what that is Guam is very unique in that when you protest a government project, you do not need to have cause. We have an automatic stay provision that says if you protest a government project, it automatically stops. You don't have to prove yourself or anything. And this has been very problematic because it delays these projects, and then even if the person who protested is found to be frivolous, it has delayed the project enough that it has to start over. I had been working on this since the 37th after my issues with power generation procurement, but then when I saw that the same thing had happened to Simon Sanchez and that had prevented the groundbreaking of Simon Sanchez, that expedited my introduction of the bill so that we can stop these problems. Now this bill, this amendment is not retroactive. It doesn't affect the current procurement at all. It doesn't contemplate that at all. What this does is it's for every procurement moving forward, there are now restrictions on what there are parameters on what you need to do now to have a stay. You need to put 2% down of the project so that you aren't just frivolously protesting things because you didn't win. If you you have to show that you have a cause and that you have a real opportunity to prevail in your protest, so that way these contractors are no longer frivolously protesting these major projects and delaying them for years. If the people of Guam are sitting at home wondering why Simon Sanchez got delayed, why all these things keep getting delayed, it's because of the procurement laws, and this is one of the most important ones. This is one of the most important ones because it doesn't just affect Simon Sanchez or GPA or all of the schools, it affects every single part of the government. If there is going to be a major project, any contractor can stop any project for any reason, even if it's a bad one, and that just doesn't make any sense. I understand that these contractors and these bidders, they have rights, but you know what? So do the people of Guam. The people of Guam have the right to working schools and working roads and working hospitals and no load shedding, and we shouldn't be blocking the way of progress because of the disgruntled nature of a few contractors who are frivolously potentially holding these projects up. And so I'm not trying to override any procurement. I'm not trying to get involved in any active procurement now. This is a amendment that looks forward so that if anybody wants to protest a government project, that is all preserved. You just have to show that it is not a complete farce. You just have to put some money down so that we know that this is not a frivolous protest. Because frivolous protests do not serve the people of Guam. And if they are being abused, we need to cut these cases. And I think that this is a truly, truly important amendment that if we pass, we will see significant changes into the future because we won't have so many important projects being frivolously protested. So I ask my colleagues for support and, you know, let's go 3 for 3 and really reform some of the procurement that we have in our government, and hopefully we can see some changes in the next term. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Parrish, you're recognized.
Did this have a public hearing?
It's a bill that's going to have a public hearing in August.
Okay.
I committed to the author, amongst others, that
Okay,
August will
so
be very busy.
So my
for-
motion is to, set this aside until we get that public hearing.
There is a motion to set this.
Objection?
There is an objection. All in favor of the motion to set the amendment aside, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. On the motion, on the amendment.
Point of
Yes.
order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The law says that you're not supposed to include these in our budget without a public hearing. So I'd like you to rule whether this has had a public hearing or not and whether it violates the law.
You can make a motion, Senator.
It's not a motion, it's a point of order.
Yeah.
We point out the laws that we're supposed to follow in here or the rule that's applicable. And that's what I did. 2
So-
GCA 2108, it says no other items can be put onto a budget bill unless they are the same subject as a bill that has had a public hearing.
So I rule that it is the will of the body.
What do you mean? How do you know that?
Because you can make a motion and then we'll vote.
What?
You can motion that is out of order and then we can
I'm
vote.
going to motion that we follow the rules? No, I'm making a point of order. If you read the Masons, that's what we do. We make points of order, we cite the rules, and the chairperson, if the rule's correct, is supposed to follow it.
By it being on the floor, Senator, it is eligible for discussion.
Pardon?
By the amendment being on the floor, it's eligible for discussion.
You've ruled many others out of order, and they were on the floor.
Senator, those were in appropriations and they were in the wrong section. This is the correct section. Unless you just don't want to entertain it, that's fine. You can make a motion.
No, I'm saying it's out of order for
Point
us
of order,
to
Mr.
entertain.
Chair. Is she testifying?
Yes.
What is she doing here?
I'm citing the
trying
rules.
to, yeah.
That's
I've-
exactly what I'm supposed to do. Raise
So-
a point of order, cite the rule, ask the chairman to review the rule.
Senator Parkinson, do you still have a point of order?
Yes, sir. This
If he's
amendment-
rising to a point of order, he
this-
needs to cite his point of order and the rule, Mr. Chair.
This point of order is, this interruption is not necessary. This amendment is in order
didn't
because
interrupt
one
anyone,
legislature
Mr.
cannot
Chair.
bind another.
Point Point of order again. He's not citing any rule, and you're allowing him to interrupt me. I'm waiting for a ruling on my point of order, whether this violates 2 GCA 2108 and is not supposed to be on the floor today.
Senator, I've ruled that it's open for discussion and the will of the body by motion.
So you're ruling that this does comply with 2 GCA 2108?
I'm ruling that it's eligible for discussion as having been put into the drive in the correct area of the chapter. On the motion.
So you're ruling that you get to
Mr.
bypass
Chair,
2
Point of
order, Mr.
GCA
Chair.
2108?
Can we
Point of order, Mr.
ask,
Chair.
Mr. Chair, on a point of order, can we
We take a
ask-
recess at this moment.
Thank you.
Ask legal.
Committee of the Whole is back in order. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment?
I raise my point of order in your ruling. So I'm going to move to overrule the chair on that ruling, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion to overrule the chair on the ruling that the will of the body to be expressed.
No, on the ruling that it's in order to entertain a floor amendment, that it was not the subject of a bill that has had a public hearing in violation of 2 GCA 2108.
It's an motion on the floor. So to overrule the chair, all in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Anyone wish to speak on the motion? Yes.
I would love
Senator
to
Tulay,
speak
you
on
recommend.
this bill.
Thank you.
This floor amendment that the author claims this is to prevent frivolous protests. I have no idea where he got that, because there's not been a public hearing. Because if there was a public hearing, we would probably hear that on the review of the OPA record. There has been no finding, none, of frivolous protests. It's gaslighting at its best. Come in here and say we're saving the people of Guam from something that they're not suffering from. There have been no frivolous protests filed. And then we're going to do reform. We love that word. Let's reform the procurement law by a deal in the back room, by bypassing every rule, by bypassing the public, by bypassing the experts on procurement, and not allowing them to have any input on our procurement reform. That's laughable to me. The section that the author does strike through is a section that already exists in our law, that if they want to remove a stay or proceed despite an automatic stay, or lift the automatic stay and proceed with the procurement nonetheless, notwithstanding the protest, there is already a procedure. Unfortunately, the government of Guam just hasn't had a good track record in these protests. And instead of forcing them to get better, to be more competent, to be less unethical, to be fairer, we're going to allow the governor to lift stays. Even though we went through an entire process, according to the earlier part of this floor amendment, that you can petition to the OPA to lift a stay, and you have to make all these findings in order to have a stay. And once the auditor makes a finding that there should be a stay, I think it's the auditor or the Superior Court of Guam, you could just go to the governor and lift it anyways. After all of that, that's what this amendment does. That's the procurement reform that we're talking about here.
Point of information, doesn't do that, Mr. Chair.
State your point of information.
Point of information, it doesn't do that, Mr. Chair. It doesn't give the power to the governor.
Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you. Subsection E. Even if a stay is granted under subsection C, which allows the public auditor or the Superior Court to grant stays after a long process, this subsection E says, even if a stay is granted under subsection C, the Chief Procurement Officer or Director of Public Works may petition the governor to lift the stay. Upon written declaration by the governor that the immediate award or performance of the contract is necessary to protect the public health, the stay shall be immediately dissolved. So who's lying? Again, I'm all for procurement reform, but to do it in the most backroom way, non-public way. Some of you senators
were kicked out of the legislature, if you don't remember, for putting your raises on in this exact same way. Not allowed to come back. That's how I got in. That year, so many of us came into the legislature, it was a shock. Because the people were fed up with riders on bills that did not have public hearing, that they did not get to have input on. But I don't know, it's like the lessons are so short. They don't last. We'll make this one exception. We'll violate our own code to amend and reform our code in the dark. That's fine. I mean, I know some of you think you know better, but it's really a denial of the people of Guam's voice.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Perez, are recognized.
I smell a rat. This bill also would require a bond, a mandatory protest bond equal to 2% of the estimated value of the contract. The public auditor, in my discussions with him, he disagreed with this because he felt it would restrict who can protest to those that have the money. We are in the middle of a Simon Sanchez protest. This could have a potential effect where it favors the richest of the contractors when there are truly valid reasons for a protest. And we're finding out, as information comes out, that this protest was not handled properly. So protests, in the words of my mentor, are important. They're important to have because it polices these businesses, or polices the government, most importantly, to ensure that we are being fair. To put a bond amount would restrict the ability for this police activity and would give favoritism to the richest of the contractors. So even if a contractor was aggrieved, a vendor was aggrieved and didn't have money to pay for this protest bond, and they had valid reasons, they would be left out of a contract that they should be able to be a part of, fair and square. And this is why we need a public hearing. To try to push this through smells of special interest. It smells of corruption. And to expect the body to agree with that, or it seems like you have the backing, 12 is greater than 3, right? To not even respect the law. We're trying to change law and circumvent our own laws. How corrupt is that? I smell a rat. This is Mossy.
On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak on the amendment and Biba Betnes Tatlu to the people of Guam. This is a dangerous amendment. The author of the amendment in his open had said that this would not affect any active procurement, and I can only presume that he's talking about the active procurement currently for the construction of a new Simon Sanchez high school. We've seen some pretty nifty reporting on this. I don't even want to call it a procurement, really. It looks to me to be a farce, where we've listened to countless hours of recordings, where the administration has continued to push to award this construction of the new Simon Sanchez to the contractor that, because of politics, in my opinion, the contractor that they very clearly want to give this project to. And so there has been a protest for this procurement. I don't believe it's frivolous. If you look at the record and you follow the reports in the media, it seems to be a very valid protest. But the issue with this amendment is, should this amendment pass, it doesn't even take a lot of imagination to think about what could happen if we put this on the books. And I'll tell you what will happen is this administration will find a way to rebid the construction of the new Simon Sanchez High School. And then if there's a protest, because again, we talk about all the problems with our procurement system. One of the biggest problems with our procurement system is when we have these politicians who are trying to use a procurement system to give these procurements to their pari or their primo. It's more like par-curement. That's when we run into problems with our procurement law, is when we start to play politics with vendor selection, when we start to play politics with trying to justify why we want to award a project to a vendor that says things like they need to donate more money to the senators so they could get bills passed. And so should this amendment pass, that's exactly what's going to happen. This amendment is a thinly veiled excuse to give the Simon Sanchez High School project to the preferred bidder of this administration. And that's exactly what will happen if this amendment will pass. So I just caution the body. I know that sometimes when certain senators argue against certain things in this body, it gasses up the opposition to support the amendment just to fly in the face of the arguments that, you know, the senators on kind of on this side in this little area over here make. I see it. The more a senator will oppose an amendment, the more it makes you guys want to raise your hands in favor of it. But I would just caution that I think even those of us who don't want to raise our hand because we think it's going to mean we support senators on this side, I think you're smart enough to know what this amendment will do. I think we're smart enough to know just by kind of who's pushing it to pass and the relationship with the administration that's what I think this amendment will do. And it also makes it so that if you have a protest, a valid protest, all of a sudden you have to come up with 2% of the project value, which means many vendors, companies will have to pay just to have their protest, especially if it's valid, be entertained. That reminds me a little bit of the medical malpractice, where just to even get in the door, you have to have piles and piles of money. And I just hope the proffer of the amendment can agree with that logic. And so I ask my colleagues to not support this amendment, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, author may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really a big thing, what we're doing here with this amendment. It truly is a big thing. And there are no rats here. I introduced this bill. It was a bill. It's public. Everyone could see it. I advocated for this. This is a problem that I have been keen on since the 37th legislature. So this didn't just come out of nowhere. It was a real problem I saw. After 20 years, we were experiencing load shedding again. And because of the procurement laws, we had to make some extraordinary measures to prevent load shedding. And that got me thinking, if this is happening here for something so important, this is happening everywhere in our government. I want the people of Guam to know our procurement law is the unique snowflake here. We are the one that is different than the rest of the United States. This amendment brings us more in line with what every other jurisdiction does. No one else really does automatic stays like this the way we do. And it's to our detriment. And I mean, if there's any rats that I'm really smelling here, it's for people who have a vested financial interest for the system to stay as it is. People who make money selling classes, mentoring senators in this hall to keep their racket going, defending a broken system. Sure, you may be the queen of procurement, but you are queen of a broken system, knowing how none of this works, but pushing to keep it going anyway. This doesn't affect any current protest. This bill, all bills that come through this chamber, are forward-looking. We do not retroactively do things. We cannot retroactively come here and say something is illegal and then start arresting people for something they did yesterday. We do not make retroactive laws. Whoever is the next governor is going to be the one that takes advantage of these laws and being able to actually get stuff done. None of this stops, stays, or protest or anything like that. It just say, if you're going to stop a multi-million-dollar project for the people of Guam, you should have better foundation to stop it than just trust me, bro. Trust me, bro, this procurement's bad. No, we're going to need some money down that your case is not frivolous. We're going to need some documentation. We're going to need some writing from the OPA that there is some real credibility to what is happening here. And it's rich, some of the rhetoric. Like, I have to wonder, do some of these people who are against these things even believe in anything? Because they will say anything. They'll bring up pay raises from a legislature none of us were in. They will, start throwing corruption. They'll start saying, oh, some deals are being made. Like, pay attention, folks. I've been on your side the entire budget. I'm just here for good governance. I don't know what kind of game you guys are playing, but this is something that needs to be done. We're not here trying to sabotage a hospital so we could run for governor. No, we're trying to build a hospital. We're trying to build a school. We're trying to build roads. Not try to keep our mentors employed because they are teaching how to run a broken procurement system. Who are we serving? Your mentor or the people of Guam? Who are we serving? Our political ambitions for governor or the people from Guam? We already don't have a hospital because of nonsense from this chamber. From some of the loudest voices in here. Some of the loudest people saying, where's the DDIQD? Like, well, there was legislation in your committees that you never let out. All these things that you say we need for procurement, you sat on them on committee. So don't come to me today saying, whoa, 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 we need to slow down. This, my colleagues and my people of Guam, this is a revolutionary change, this amendment. It is a huge change. It will affect every single part of government. So don't get it twisted. I am not sneaking anything through in. This is going to be one of the most significant policy amendments that has ever come out of this body. And we should all know that going forward. And it is a positive change, and I proudly ask my colleagues to support me in this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, are there any objections? Seeing objection, all in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand.
Chair, can you repeat that, please?
Motion fails.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Your comment. All
I
those-
asked if there was an objection, and there was an objection.
Okay. Yeah, so what was the vote? That's why I was, so there was an objection. All those in favor of the amendment, or?
Yeah, roll call.
How many votes did you count? I counted 6. No, she was raising it to ask a question, yeah. I counted 6. Yeah, she was asking if there's an objection. I'm confirming with the clerk the vote. No, it's all those who are in favor of the amendment, ma'am. That's the way we do it. Yes, there was an objection. Yes, yes. Asking. Colleagues, on a confirmation from the clerk, the motion did pass. 8 votes. We are now on the next amendment. The next amendment is VAB L11 P174 VI. Senator Boyer, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this amendment comes from Bill 201-38 and removes the requirement that a candidate for the Guam Education Board obtains 150 signatures from registered voters in order to qualify for nomination. I want to thank Senator Tajgui for recommending this change during the public hearing and for submitting written testimony to my office in support of this amendment. 6 members of the Guam Education Board are elected by the people of Guam. Ultimately, it's our voters who decide who they believe is the best qualified to serve on the board and help shape the future of our public education system. Removing the petition requirement will provide more opportunities for members of our community to step forward and run for the elected school board. It removes an unnecessary barrier that may discourage or has discouraged other qualified individuals from becoming candidates. This amendment does not change the qualifications required to serve, nor does it remove any other filing or election requirements. It just simply allows more individuals the opportunity to place their names before the voters. The people of Guam will still make the final decision at the ballot box, and I respectfully ask my colleagues for the support on this amendment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Talai, you recognize.
All right, so the amendment says that those who are running for the Guam Education Board or the Board of Education no longer need to get signatures of 150 people before they're put onto the ballot. And the author said that the Department of Education is requesting this, or is it current board members, or you're telling me it's the superintendent, or if you could just be more
Does the author
Specific?
yield?
Mr. Chair, this was brought up at the public hearing for Bill 201, which was the Board of Education, changing reforming the Board of Education. This was one of the things that they asked.
Who's they? Who's asking for this?
Do you yield, Senator?
A couple board members had raised this, Mr. Chair, and even a couple, there are a couple people that I know who are running for the Board of Education who also, even when they decided to pick up their packet, was saying that this was something that was discouraging for them for this position. That's all.
Senator July, does that answer your question?
All right, so he's saying now it's the board members, not the Department of Education necessarily.
That's correct. It wasn't it wasn't the Department of
All right.
Education.
Yes.
And by removing this, are we removing the deadline for them to declare their intention to run? Because on part of the struck out provision in subsection 1, it says they must file with the commission no later than first Monday after the primary election.
Senator, was that the intent of your amendment? Do you yield?
No, Mr. Chair, my intent wasn't to do that.
Should like a recess?
Yes,
Take
can I
look
get a
at it,
recess and
maybe
we'll
amend
look
the
at what-
amendment? We are in recess. Committee of the Whole is back in order. We are still on the Borja Amendment. I believe Senator Talai, you still have the floor.
Thank you. When I guess we broke for recess, I was just questioning that this amendment was removing the deadline for candidates to file for the Board of Education, and that would interfere with this election. This amendment seems intended to affect the upcoming election for the Board of Education. Is with the sponsor yield, is that correct?
Does the sponsor yield on this question?
According to the Election Commission, this wouldn't take effect based on like when we would pass it because of the when the budget law would be signed. This wouldn't take effect until the next election.
Senator Talai, you still have the floor.
It would not,
According to the Election Commission,
because the current deadline is to file no later than the first Monday after the primary, so their deadline hasn't even come yet.
Mr. Chairman, just a little point of order or information. Because it's a budget bill, nothing goes in effect until October 1st. So regardless of what we pass, until October 1st it goes in effect, if it passes.
Thank you for that. That's correct.
I believe that's his interpretation, Mr. Chair, but I would question that this seems very much intended to affect the upcoming election. Do we know if any candidates have already filed?
Does the author yield?
yes.
There are some who have taken the trouble to get the 150 signatures and filed. All right. Normally, I would have no objection. I just really want to know whether we are purposely affecting the upcoming election, and especially after some who have already obtained the 150 signatures. And I'm not confident that opinions.
Point of order, point of information, Mr. Chair. We
Yes.
talked to Maria at the Guam Election Commission, and she said based on the timing of this bill, they wouldn't implement this until the next election. That was from the executive director.
Thank you.
All right. Well, there's nothing in this provision that says that. Otherwise, I guess I can see why the board members would want to remove that barrier to obtain 150 signatures. But I guess I'm trying to think, why the barrier exists in the first place. It's the same barrier that all of us have in running for various offices. I think we've removed this from certain ones, but I guess it's just to get a initial confidence of that many people to put your name on the ballot. But I have no objection to removing this if it does not affect the upcoming election.
On the amendment, Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment that will strike out. So if there's any question of the prior to election, it'll unstrike the portion that talks about must file with the commission no later than the first Monday after primary election, unless such date is a holiday in which it shall be filed the following holiday or 60 days prior to the special election. That's my amendment.
So you've reinstated that portion
That portion
on the filing.
that was inadvertently struck out.
On the amendment to the amendment, are there any objections? Any discussion?
Sir, what is the amendment to the amendment?
Say again. It should
Can
be
you
on your
repeat
desk.
his
Senator.
amendment to the amendment?
Do you have it on your desk, Senator? I believe they passed it out. So it's in section 1. They've reinstated nomination of candidates must file. And then it was unstruck, so no later than first Monday after the primary election unless such date is a holiday in which it shall be filed the day following the holiday or 60 days prior to a special election. So they restored the language in terms of the filing requirement. On the amendment to the amendment, want to close, Senator?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just, it's a very simple amendment. But, I just take a reservation with the statement that is interpretation that it goes into effect October 1st. Por favor, every year we do a budget, everything goes into effect on October 1st. If that's a means of interpretation, figure it out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment to the amendment, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing none, motion carries. On the main motion, on the main amendment, anyone else wish to speak? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Just want to see Mr. Chair for the opportunity to speak on the amendment, which I'm guessing the intent is to make it easier for people to run for the elected school board. But I can't help but note the irony of this amendment, which is coming from the same senator who is trying to eliminate, through another bill, the elected school board. That's some high irony, Mr. Chair. And I don't support this amendment because I think gathering the signatures, it's one of the few ways that board members running for re-election, potential board members, actually engage with the public. I mean, as we all know, we've got to go get signatures every time we not just run for public office the first time, but for every single election. And I enjoy getting the signatures because you have an opportunity to talk with constituents, to talk with registered voters about the issues. And I think if we look at a lot of the concerns that are being shared about board members and whether or not they interact with the public meaningfully, I think that removing this opportunity for them to go around and get these signatures, I just don't think it serves the purpose, and I think they should go get the signatures like the rest of us who are running for office. It's a great opportunity for them to have conversations with the public, and it also shows that they're willing to do what it takes to enter into public service. Gathering 150 signatures, when a candidate does that, to me it means they're serious about, getting into public service. So I won't be voting for the amendment, and I, again, just wanted to note on the record the irony of trying to make it easier for people to run for school board out of one side of our mouth, but the other one, we're trying to take away the people's right to vote for representation on the elected school board. Sizos Masi, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment as amended, anyone else? Seeing and hearing none, would you like to close, Senator? There is an objection to the amendment. All in favor of the amendment as amended, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment carries. Colleagues, we will at least start this next amendment, and we'll be taking a lunch at 12. This next amendment is VAB L11 P174 VII. Senator Bora, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this amendment makes technical and administrative updates to Public Law 38-99, the Guam Veterans Higher Education Benefits Act, which provides qualifying veterans and eligible dependents with access to tuition-free education at the University of Guam, the Guam Community College, subject to the requirements and limitations established by the law. The language before you is based on Bill 335-38, which received a public hearing, and during that hearing, both the University of Guam and the Guam Community College testified in support of allowing each institution to develop the rules, regulations, policies, and administrative procedures necessary to effectively implement this program. The amendment adopts the provisions contained in the bill, which also incorporates a recommendation from the Guam Community College regarding the rulemaking process. Specifically, it clarifies that the University of Guam and GCC, or Guam Community College, as entities responsible for administering the program, shall each independently develop and promulgate the rules, regulations, policies, and procedures necessary for implementation. These changes will provide both institutions with the administrative authority needed to implement the program efficiently and ensure that eligible veterans and their dependents can begin accessing these educational benefits without unnecessary delay. If the amendment is adopted, the institutions anticipate that they'll be able to start providing these waivers as early as January 2027. Mr. Chairman and colleagues, the amendment is administrative in nature, reflects the recommendations of the institutions responsible for implementation, and helps move this important benefit closer to reality for Guam's veterans and their families. And I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you.
On the amendment, anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Would you like to close on the amendment? Senator July, you're recognized.
When the original bill was passed, it said that it says the commission shall promulgate rules and regs, and that's being changed to be the institutions should promulgate the rules and regs, and we're giving them a deadline. And I just want to know, have you seen any draft rules and regs, or have they been working on that?
Does the author yield?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The commission that was recommended to be added, the initial drafting of the bill, according to, I think, the governor's office when we asked about when they were going to meet, has not met in years, Mr. Chair. So there is no draft of any kind. And the recommendation to move to this or to implement this language was the same that we have right now for the minimum tuition assistance.
Right. So now it's the institutions that are writing the rules and regs, and I'm asking if you've seen any rules and regs drafted by them.
Does the author yield?
Yes, Mr. Chair. No, but they will once this, because right now that was not what was asked of them or required of them in the initial passing of the law, Mr. Chair.
Senator Chulai, you recognize.
Thank you. I just was curious about the part of the rules where how they're going to be able to, this says that qualifying veterans and their eligible dependents, subject to the limitations of this chapter, and if sufficient institutional capacity exists as determined by the institutions. I just wanted to know if we have any kind of preliminary rules as to how they're going to be interpreting that. When are they going to say they have institutional capacity or not? And how is that going to be, flexed fairly for the different veterans and their dependents? For example, if they take 25 veterans and dependents, and then the 26th person to apply is a veteran, are they going to be cut off? And I guess that's kind of what I just want to see with the rules. But if there aren't any right now, then I guess we just have to wait to see that. So other than that, that's my question. I want to be able to say with confidence to the veterans that either all of them are going to be covered or just 5 of them, or what does that really going to look like if sufficient institutional capacity exists? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Yeah, so I would like to make an amendment on page, amendment to the amendment. It's on page, sorry, there's no page number here. It's in section 56103, subsection B4. So, so again, the program should be, it says, shall not be applied to repeated courses beyond 1 additional attempt. My amendment is to strike out beyond 1 additional attempt. I think that, if these seats are very valuable, I think it's important to give preference to those that, are able to take the courses and complete them. I think it's, as an educator, we want them to hold them to a higher standard in regards to ensuring that they, are taking the courses seriously, right? But I think that we're enabling mediocrity with that one, beyond 1 additional attempt when these spaces are very potentially limited. Yeah, it just doesn't sit right with me to have to use taxpayers' dollars for someone to repeat a course when everyone else is paying for the courses, and then if they fail the course, they would have to pay for it too. So I don't know, I just don't agree with that. So yeah, my amendment is to strike that section beyond one additional attempt.
On the amendment to the amendment, does everybody understand the amendment to the amendment?
Objection.
On the amendment to the amendment, Senator Boer, you recognize.
I object, Mr. Chair, to that amendment.
Okay. Senator Gumitato, you recognize.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
yes.
I object. I mean, these students come to the university or the Guam Community College. They're not going there to purposely try to not do well. Life happens, and these students go through so much on the daily, whether their tire gets flat, or they get, some of them who are maybe in the guard, they might go on orders, they miss class first. Sometimes it's not always the perfect situation for our students at Guam Community College and GCC at any part of the academic year. So I think this, I just am against the amendment, and thank you for the time.
On the amendment to the amendment, anyone else? Seeing here none, would you like to close, Senator Perez?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to spending taxpayers' dollars, I mean, as a taxpayer, do we want our money to be utilized and leveraged to the best possible way? And, if we were to be very transparent with the taxpayers, I mean, to know that your money went to pay for a course that somebody failed, I mean, I'd rather it go to pay for somebody else who has yet to experience these courses. I mean, that's just, I feel that that's where I think our taxpayers should be going towards, is giving more veterans the opportunity, and their dependents an opportunity versus, going to pay for a failed course. I mean, that's just how, yeah, I think we need to, that's just my thing. Thanks.
On the amendment to the amendment, there has been an objection. All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Perez, you still have the floor. Senator Perez?
I
Do
wait
you
my
wish to
time.
speak anymore? Okay. On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak? Senator Barnett, you recognize.
So just want to see Mr. Chair for the opportunity to speak on the amendment, which looks to, I guess, correct errors with the original legislation, which I didn't support because, well, first of all, it's an unfunded mandate. Secondly, according to a lot of my veteran friends, there already exists very significant federal benefits for veterans to be able to get higher education. And at the time we debated this, I raised the point about having to subsidize this cost and it leading to potential tuition increases for everybody
Point of
else.
information, Mr. Chair, if the speaker can yield, or if the speaker can, he's saying that it's an unfunded mandate. I mean, speaking with the GCC, who even said on the record, and UOG, to fill these seats that in a class of 20 that only has 10 students, there's no additional cost. So if the senator from Zonya or Iban can elaborate on what that cost is, because according to the institutions, there's right now for the seats for a class that has already been assigned, and to start, it's on a first come first served basis. So if the speaker can.
Yeah, then the public hearing for the legislation, I think it was UOG who said it was going to cost $1 million. And
Senator,
they
you
also
may continue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And
address
so
that in your
that's
close.
where I got it from. I mean, hello, obviously it's going to cost something. we can't give a free college to people and expect that it's not going to cost anything. So,
Point of information, Mr. Chair,
if
that it's not an additional cost like the speaker continues to claim.
Okay, you can address that in your close. Thank you. Senator Barnett.
Yeah, so I guess I would ask, is there any funding included in the budget for the University of Guam or the Guam Community College to be able to fund this benefit?
You're directing that to?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
To
the proffer of the amendment.
would the author yield?
Mr. Chair, speaking with the institution at this time, they're not requesting any additional funding. Thank you.
Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
I would just go back to the initial bill public hearing in which they said it was an unfunded mandate. But allow me to please continue, and that's why I don't support it. Unfunded mandate, we can argue all day, but the simple fact remains that veterans and their dependents already receive very significant and extensive benefits from the federal government, and given the recent audit and some of the issues with the University of Guam, and they now have the ability to increase tuition for everybody else. And I think, again, when we talk about adding more benefits for a group of people who already receive significant benefits from the federal government, again, if that means that everyone else is going to have to pay more for tuition, I can't support it. And it's very simple reasoning, Mr. Chair. So, Sidos Masi for the opportunity to speak.
On the amendment, anyone else? Author may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, some of the concerns about from the retiring speaker in regards to the funding, you know, prior to this legislation being even introduced, Mr. Chair, I met with the institutions, and even in the bill, it says it's first come, first served basis. It doesn't say when, you know, a veteran has to be given a seat in a class. If the capacity is there and they've maximized all the classes that have been put on the schedule, they will accommodate. Now, what the university is talking about is because of course their enrollment is a lot higher than the Guam Community College, and they want to continue, you know, expand the seats to those, it's going to require funding. We recognize that, Mr. Chair, and there is a requirement for them to report back to the legislature what that number would be. And so, you know, and the other claim about, well, you know, veterans get all this extra benefits. The benefits that we get, I mean, even for education, it doesn't cover a full 4 years. You know, and I think for me as a veteran and going through, and it's not just about the service, but the sacrifice and the all that comes with that, Mr. Chair. I will still say that veterans deserve this, even if they received 8 years of free paid college. Because there's no, you know, we say this, there's no debt that could be repaid to the service that veterans do for our, not just the country, you know, we could take the country out of the picture, but for this island, Mr. Chair, from typhoons to helping our brothers, you know, in the NMI and in the region. So yes, I think that veterans, I mean, if there's money that will be involved, I'm sure we'll figure it out. And then that's all we're doing here, Mr. Chair. It's not, you know, he can continue to say it's an unfunded mandate, and that's fine. But I mean, even right now with the veterans that have already availed to it, it has nothing to do with the funding, or there's no money to offer these benefits to these veterans. It's about the rules. And so I ask my colleagues for their support, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, there has been an objection. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment passes. Colleagues, we'll take a lunch break at 12. We'll be back at 1:30. We will work until 10 tonight. We will finish the budget tonight. This day will, as we close. Susmasi. We are in recess.